everyone. Welcome to the 23rd IoT New York Meetup. Great to have everyone here. Just a show of hands, how many folks here, this is their first IoT New York Meetup? Great, welcome. And how many are returning? Been to several. Great. It's a great mix, and we're always happy to have kind of a regular crew that gets together each month, but it also makes the discussion really interesting when we have lots of new folks come in. So you're definitely welcome here. As I've kind of explained in previous months, it's not a strictly technical or a strictly functional kind of meetup. It really started several years ago when I saw there weren't many people in New York talking about IoT, and it was clear it was going to become something big, and kind of got a small core group together to really kind of discuss different aspects of IoT, and over time it's really grown. We've covered everything from open source and IoT to legal aspects of IoT. Last month we actually did a webinar around data science and IoT. So the topics within IoT are endless. I definitely welcome your feedback because we want to keep on making the speakers and the topics very relevant to everyone here. And I know there was lots of great interest around tonight's meetup because we have two fantastic speakers on tap. So we will kick it off and get it underway here. So in terms of the agenda, I pushed it a little bit later because the pizza rolled in a little late, so we just enjoyed some food and drinks. I'm going to run through a few member announcements and then open it up to the floor if anybody has any announcements. This could be anything from you're interested in collaborating with others on a side project you want to do, maybe your company's hiring. You may hear about interesting open source projects, so it really kind of is open, and it's for you guys to kind of either announce something you're looking for or something you have to offer the community. It's just a nice way for, since there are a good amount of people in the room, it's a nice way for people to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm interested in this aspect, come speak with me if you want to kind of collaborate or dig deeper. So that will be the member announcements and asks. Then we will head into the Arduino founder talk. I'll be announcing the speakers shortly, but we have Massimo Banzi, the co-creator of Arduino, of the Arduino project, and the CEO of Arduino. Massimo's seated over there, and he'll be speaking first. We're really thrilled to have him. He speaks internationally, and there's a very engaged community around Arduino and then around the Maker movement, which is a perfect segue into our next speaker. Sherry Huss is the co-creator of Maker Faire and the VP of Maker Media. Here we go. And Sherry also speaks globally and is involved with a global audience of makers. She's very passionate about making makers, and so we're going to hear a lot from her about what's coming up here in New York around World Maker Faire, which is very exciting. We also have some exciting giveaways, 2 passes to MakerCon, and then 10 passes to day passes to Maker Faire. So I know a lot of folks came out tonight, particularly because they're interested in hearing both about Arduino and about Maker Faire and what's happening here in New York. So hopefully it should be a lot. You'll learn a lot from the speakers, get a lot of good discussion, and 12 of you will walk away with great passes for these exciting events. So happy to have everyone here. So in that vein, speaking of those passes and the wonderful food and drink we have, we want to thank Sherry and Maker Faire for sponsoring tonight. It was very generous, and it seemed to be a perfect match because within the IoT community there are plenty of makers, and it's a great way for us to kind of learn a little bit more and get a sneak preview of Maker Faire and MakerCon before they happen in the coming weeks. So thank you, Maker Faire, and thank you, Sherry. Yes, thank you. And then also, 2 ongoing supporters that we have are Cardozo Law School, so where we are here. It's the Tech Startup Clinic at Cardozo Law School is a great resource. It's a free resource for entrepreneurs. I know Aaron Wright is, raise your hand, Aaron. And if you'd like to say a few words, feel free.
So we run a technology clinic. If you have a company and you need legal help, we help you out. We help out with everything from formation to IP issues to kind of everything in between. We've worked with a lot of companies in the IoT space, just helping them get pointed in the right direction. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Aaron at Cardozo Law School.
Great, thanks, Aaron. So yeah, we encourage you to check that out, and they're very gracious venue sponsors. So Aaron is the guy behind getting us this great venue every month, and we're lucky this month to be in the 3rd floor lounge, and it's a nice, we're usually in a more academic setting, so this is a nice Nice way to switch it up, so thank you, Aaron. And then Internet Society, behind the camera we have Jolie McVie. Thank you, Jolie. Jolie has been great offering to videotape, and later on we will post this so that those members who couldn't make it can see the video, or if you kind of wanted to review something or jog your memory, that will be made available. So I will go ahead and post that to the event page following this meetup. So thank you again, Jolie and Aaron as well. Let's give them a round of applause too. Great. So I'll kind of roll through these quickly because I know you're all eager to hear from our speakers tonight. So in terms of upcoming events and spaces, we have a few announcements. Like I said, please contact me if your team is working on an interesting project, or if you're interested in digging deeper into an area of IoT. Feel free to be in touch with me via messaging or Twitter at Linda Drabik. Feel free to be in touch. We've had this announcement for the past few months, but very relevant for tonight. Hack Manhattan is a meetup in Makerspace. So check them out, hackmanhattan.com, and they're on 137 West 14th Street. Question?
They have an open night, I think.
Or comment.
Thursday and Thursday.
Oh, that's right. Yep. So if you look at hackmanhattan.com, they should have information about what kind of open house nights or open nights that they have that you can go ahead in and use the space. Right.
I think they initially said it. You look on their video camera somewhere on their website. There's people in there going
At all hours. Great. Yeah, thank you. Another member announcement, Citrus Byte. So some of you might remember, gosh, it was probably 4 months ago, we had a meetup about the AT&T M2X platform, and it was kind of a developer workshop that we had in partnership with AT&T. Citrus Byte was a professional services firm that worked with them, and they were trying to get some use cases and case studies going. So they're offering $20K in free professional services. If you're working on the AT&T M2X data service, they'd love to kind of work with you, help enable, and possibly use that as a case study. So the contact is there, hello@citrusbyte.com. Another, let's see, from Ron Hiller, he let us know today that the DroneBox conference is tomorrow afternoon at Bellworks. The site is njtc.org, DroneBox. /DroneBox, sorry. And then the 50% discount code, if anybody wants to join, NJ Tech Weekly. So thanks, Ron, for pointing that out. And I apologize, there was another group that is from Asia that was going to be presenting or participating in Maker Faire also had another offer, and it was a 5% offer, and there was a discount code. I'm sorry because I wasn't able to get this up on the slides, but I will plan to also put that in the discussions thread of the meetup page, so everyone can see that as well. Great. Let's see, do we have Lindsay? Did Lindsay make it out tonight? I don't think so. Okay, great. So let's see, the New York City CTO office, they're doing some really interesting things around IoT, and I've recently had a really great discussion with one of the folks there, and she asked us to pass this along to the group. Information about the Connected Cities Challenge, so there's 25K in prizes, from ideation to prototype. Let's see, connectedcities.splashthat.com. So all the information is on the screen if you want to check that out. Has anyone here ever participated in the, the Big Apps competition for the Big Apple? But has anyone here heard of that competition where it's apps for the city? Okay, great, so we have a few hands in here. So similar to that idea of the city inviting tech folks in New York Metro to create apps for use by government or citizens or visitors. This is another interesting thing out of the New York, the Mayor's Office of Tech and Innovation. So feel free to check that out. Okay, enough from me. So anyone, please raise your hand if you have a member announcement or ask that you'd like to call out to the group.
Printer hacking contact.
Okay, printer hacking, contact the gentleman in the back. Yes?
Has anybody heard of Andre Smith's idea with the quadcopters on Bluetooth and passing the quadcopter off to a friend who also has Bluetooth?
Anyone here of the quadcopter passing off to a friend via Bluetooth?
If you meet this guy, he's just like this really great guy. He's starting a company. If you Google Andre Smith and quadcopter, you should find it. Otherwise, I'll give you his contact.
Okay, cool. Cool. If anyone's interested in that, definitely chat with him afterwards. We had another hand. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I work for a company by the name of Web Intensive Software, and we're currently looking for a project manager who's client-facing and has coding experience and is familiar with applications, both mobile and desktop. And if that describes you or somebody you know.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, any other member announcements or asks before we roll on? Okay, another comment, question?
So I work with a company called Cabo, and we do data science competitions. So if anyone is in the industry where you generate data, where you have some data sets, whether it's a device or a site, and you're still trying to make sense of that data, we sort of provide a platform where you can outsource the optimization of your data sets as to how to use it within the tool. So if you have some data that you collect, you might not know how to use, you can come talk to me and we'll try to see what we can.
Great, and what's the name of the company again?
Kaggle.
Kaggle, okay, for data science. So anyone interested in making sense of data, or they have big data sets that they want to kind of analyze and slice and dice. He's your man, great.
I've got another one.
Yep.
I don't know if you know about the thing in the White House this week where they had the Smart Cities Initiative, but one of the things that came out of that was the National Science Foundation sending out grants left, right and centre, but one of them went to the city of Chicago, and they're doing this project that is called the Array of Things. And what this is like a bunch of money, which is just going to place all these sensors all around the city that are going to take probably mostly environmental data, which is going to be an open data set that's going to be usable by people. It's a very interesting project. Array of Things.
Great, thanks, Julie. Great, so on to our first speaker. Massimo Banzi, he'll let you know a little bit about his background, but just kind of as a prelude to that, we were chatting briefly before kicking off the event here, and I asked both he and Sherry, it's like, oh, since, what got you into making, since when have you become a maker? And Massimo was like, I think since I was 8 years old. So I'm curious, how many folks in here consider themselves makers? Great, most of the room. And I know everyone's very excited because he is the co-creator of Arduino. How many folks in here use Arduino or tell others about it? Great, so a good majority of the room is familiar with it. That helps Massimo because he'll tell you a little bit about Arduino, but since a lot of folks here are pretty familiar with it, he's gonna probably go a little bit deeper into its application within IoT, which is also very relevant to this meetup, so that'll be helpful. And then just to kind of close the loop, when I was asking Sherry about that, she was explaining that she was very passionate about the world of making, and they really had a successful run at building these events around. One was DwellCon, is that right? Dwell, and the other is MakerCon, and two very interesting areas. But she definitely felt the passion, the pull around the maker movement and how it empowers people. So I won't steal any more of their thunder. They'll each be letting you know a little bit more about themselves as they take the stage here. But to kick it off, please welcome Massimo.
All right, so good evening, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work that we've been doing the last few months on IoT. So, I guess from the hands I've seen before, like a lot of people, kind of most of you know what Arduino is, I guess. I'll talk a little bit about it later. But. So the idea is that we've worked at simplifying the way people access microcontrollers that develop products that are controlled by a small computer. So in a way, that particular task was still very complicated. So we made it just a tad bit simpler, to the point that we increased the number of people who can access that particular technology. Microcontrollers are embedded into everyday objects, so if you have a regular old-style thermostat or some of these light bulb lamps or something, might have this little microcontroller inside. So we worked at simplifying that particular process to the point that now, the community is pretty big. I was give you some figures before, but the Arduino website in the last year has seen 21 million visitors, unique visitors, of which about 6-7 million are regular visitors. So this means that there is a huge interest by people in understanding how to program microcontrollers, how to build devices, and clearly the extension of that work is what happens when you build devices that are connected. So one of the things we've been tackling in the last few years is how do you extend the philosophy of Arduino to connected products? How do you understand, how do you create something that makes it very simple for people to build a connected device? Can you create a system that allows you to build a functional, secure, connected device in 10 lines of code? I mean, that's in a way the challenge. And so I'm gonna touch a few of the sort of philosophical issues, I guess, in a way, and talk about a little bit about what we are doing. So one of the things that it's interesting right now is that this is the 2014 Gartner curve. Are you familiar with this kind of curve, I guess? So this kind of, in a way, it's a work done by this consultancy company to kind of map out all the different technologies and where they are in terms of maturity. So if you look at that, the Internet of Things is now at the peak of hype. So that's essentially the place where everybody has a huge expectation out of this technology, but the technology hasn't really delivered yet. Because as you can see, the curve has this sort of, this part where basically you sort of, things don't really work out as you expect. So there's a lot of disillusionment. They'll be like, what the hell is this? This is useless. And then suddenly it starts to become, something that becomes part of people's life and it starts to really impact people. So if you look at it, enterprise 3D printing is now in that particular phase. So imagine how much it takes for a technology to become something that people notice, start to use, lots of hype, then the hype doesn't really kind of work out as everybody expects, and then finally it becomes something useful. So one of the questions that I always ask, also when I work, I still teach and I work with my students, and we do a lot of classes about IoT, not from a technical point of view, but really exploring what happens in people's life when they have connected products. And so the question is, where is my connected fridge? So this is a video from Whirlpool from 1982. And they're already talking about the fridge that will let you know when the milk is, bad and you have to buy a new one, or, and still we don't have it. Now, and somebody even created this blog called Fuck Yeah Internet Fridge. Sorry about that. And you can see here there's a fantastic fridge which is basically running Windows. So I guess what you can do with this thing is you can probably browse the web while you're opening the fridge. So sort of this kind of stuff. So effectively we've been told that this was going to happen. We've been told that this was going to be the thing, and then we don't have it. We don't have it. We have an incredibly powerful computer. Everybody has it. They cost nothing, and yet the fridge is still what it was. So there was this issue that, in a way, there was a strange relationship between people and technology in the home. For example, this is an interesting piece of advertising. I don't know if you know. Have you ever seen it? This is from a kitchen computer from Honeywell, which has this kind of beautiful message as well. Where, in a way, beautiful, obviously, in a sarcastic way. So, in a way, our relationship with technology, in a way, it was like this, that people imagine that you would bring a computer in the kitchen and you would use this thing to look up recipes, And this is something that people have always, I think when I got my first computer, that was one of the kind of lies I told my parents, that we could store recipes in the computer, So, but still we don't do it. We still use bits of paper, So there is this issue that right now, I think in the connected devices IoT world, we understand how, we understand the technology. This is a slide made by a venture capital investor based here in New York who organizes the Hardwired NYC Meetup. And he collected all the icons, all the different logos of all the companies that are involved in this, and they laid out by what they do. So there's also Arduino down there in sort of in the infrastructure area. So the idea is we understand very well, we have all the technologies we need, we have everything, and everybody's building a consortium, you know, like this is one, this is another one from Germany, which has German companies, and then this is the Industrial Internet Consortium. You see the number of companies increasing at every slide. And this is another consortium, and this is a consortium if you are British, because obviously there are also consortiums where you can take part if you are a certain, you know, nationality. So there is this thing that, you know, everybody's building this and nobody's happy, to paraphrase one of, you know, a New York comedian, Louis C.K. And in a way, there is this thing where we understand the technology, we have all sorts of technology for everything we need, there are 20 different ways of doing it, and there's a lot of people who claim to be working on this kind of stuff. From a recent report I read by this company called Vision Mobile, they did a big survey of developers, and they published it in August. They estimate there are 4.5 million people in the world who are define themselves as kind of, you know, IoT developers. So that's a lot of people. But I think we are still struggling to figure out what is really the right application, what is really the meaning of what we're doing. So one of the, you know, we find ourselves sometimes faced with these kind of things. Oh yeah, let's solve this problem with this big data thing. And there is this problem. Sometimes you're involved in these design sessions where some keywords are, you know, we have to have the big data thing. You know, we have to have the deep learning. We have to have the, you know, so still, the connectivity by itself doesn't solve everything. You know? Otherwise, this project, for example, will make a lot of sense. This is a project from some designers in the UK, which is given to nuns who are basically, who have no contact with the outside world. So this device captures headlines and presents themes for the nuns to pray for. So the nuns get this device and they're told, you know, please pray about Afghanistan. You don't know what it is, but still, you know, it's... So in a way, you know, this is a connected device. This is stuff that people are building, you know, as an exploration. So we try to figure out what are some parameters, what are some values we can inject in this, at least as Arduino. I don't know if you ever heard of this thing called slow food, but it's a movement that started off in Italy back in the 80s to try to counter fast food. So when the first McDonald's app opened in Italy, a lot of people were like, oh my God, this is a scandal. You know, what is this thing? So they thought, you know, we really need to go back to a world where the food is good, clean, and fair. And then I thought, you know, it's interesting because some of these things that people say about food could be possibly maybe applied to the things we build. Can we kind of attach values to the things we design? So in a way, for me, good means open source. So this is a picture of an Arduino board. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's a small platform we developed to make it easy for people to program these little microcontrollers that you can embed into everyday objects. Now the whole connectivity aspect, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, even GSM connectivity has become so simple, so low cost that you can make devices like this that are connected to the internet in various different ways. And so the exploration is how do we enable people? And I think, you know, open source is obviously one of the best ways to enable people because what you do is out there. A lot of people adopt Arduino simply because they don't have to sign NDAs, they don't have to sign forms, they don't have to, you know, get any permission. You don't need anybody's permission to use it. You just go there, take the software, take the hardware. So Arduino is probably the first open source hardware platform that became really successful. There were a lot of experiments before, but in a way, now there are several million Arduinos on the market. If you count the real one, the fake ones, the companies that claim to be Arduino, but they're not, and the people in China who put Arduino on everything just to sell it. You know, there's a lot of different ways of being Arduino, I guess, in a way. But there's the inevitable fact is that there's millions of these devices around. And but one of the things that was important for me was really this ability to build something very quickly. So this is a picture from, it's an ad from this toy I got as a present when I was a kid, which was designed originally by this German company called Braun. And it was essentially a modular kit where electronic parts were in small cubes that you could snap together magnetically. No, it's not little bits. This is from 40 years ago. But the concept is the same. You have components, you snap them together, you build circuits. So the idea is that you could build a radio. I guess in 1970 something, when these people built this, the radio was the coolest thing you could build. So, you know, that in 2 minutes you could actually build a radio that was functioning. This action of experimenting with technology, getting something working very quickly gave you the strength to continue. That's what I said. When I was 8 years old, I got this. And I started to build stuff in parallel with taking apart everything I could put my hands on. So this activity of like taking everything apart to understand, and then this way to recombine the technology to learn with your hands was very important for me to get into making. And I think, you know, again, we need to build tools that are open protocols, but we also be careful to build something that can be understood and used without spending months reading manuals before you can do something very simple. So I think that, you know, open source plus this kind of process of open innovation we have empowers people. There's a book that was very influential for me, which is from this professor from MIT, Eric von Ippel. If you want to check it out, you can actually download it for free from his website. And he talks about this process of innovation. It's sort of like top-down innovation done by a big corporation, people participating in the innovation process at different levels. And I think there was a big inspiration in the work we did before we did Arduino. You know, and a lot of things you can do, you know, for example, the fact that Arduino was available in open source enabled things like this. You know, when the Fukushima disaster happened, a bunch of people in a hackerspace in Tokyo, they basically built this Arduino-based product that has an Ethernet connectivity and a Geiger counter, and then they quickly built this website where they could basically plot on the website the position of one of these Geiger counters and the actual radiation level. So then they built 100 of these and gave them out to people, and they had a very detailed map of the actual radiation. And at some point, the government had to admit that the radiation levels were higher than they always said they were, because of a lot of the work that people did. And this is something that was born in the community. It was something that came up quick, and a bunch of people participated and they had it going. So I think this is the power of some of these open source technologies like Arduino. You have an idea, you can quickly put together something that really has an impact. And also I think open source, it's important if you want to reach developers. Again, from that report I was talking about, this study says that 64% of these IoT developers hang out in some kind of an open source community. And I guess a lot of these people hang out in the Arduino community in a way or another. So this is, you know, the good for me is open source is very important as the base for any platform we want to build. The clean part, it's interesting because I think there's an issue with current connected products that they tend to have a short life. One of the trends that I start to see, also because I spend now quite a bit of time in China, is that there's going to be, I think these connected products are going to go through a phase where they're going to be a little bit like fast fashion. You will have to churn out products very quickly, new models constantly, you know, to keep the excitement going, to keep people buying this. So this brings a number of issues on the technology side, but also what happens with the long-term user experience for your product? What happens if somebody buys a product and then after a few months it stops working because the cloud service behind it is dead? How do we sort of find a way to give products a new life? Somebody started this blog called the Internet of 404s, which is kind of a collection of devices that are no longer, you know, they left us. So the physical embodiment of the device is still with us. Now these many Nabastag rabbits, people still have them. They just don't work anymore because the cloud is dead. So how do we work at making sure that when some parts of the system dies, you don't have to throw all of this into the garbage? And I think that's a big question that we have to answer as designers. And also there's a question of design adds a lot of value to products, and at the moment design is always presented as some kind of a luxury, no? So if you buy the remote control on the left, it's going to cost you $1, maybe even less in Shenzhen. And if you want to buy the one on the right, since it's a design item, it costs a lot more. But effectively design, we need to kind of move past this phase where design is a luxury thing, Design is part of everything we do. We can do good design, and we don't have to make everything gold-plated. It can also be something that it's accessible to. Actually, in a way, the origins of design was this idea that how do we work to make objects available to the largest amount of people possible. So the origin of design was designing things that would be easy to manufacture, they would be cheap and beautiful, they would improve people's lives, and we could sell these things to a lot of people instead of just a very selected minority. So this is something we need to work on, I guess. And the fair part, it's also important. All of these connected devices have some kind of, they're connected to what? To some kind of a cloud platform. And currently, all of the social network platforms that you're using, like Facebook, you are the product. Since you're not paying any money to use Facebook, then you are the product. They sell you to some other people for money. And so, obviously, this brings about a lot of issues, no? And so this is another slide from this British cartoonist about the future of advertisement. You go to the supermarket and suddenly the supermarket says, "Oh, hi, John, how are your hemorrhoids?" And, still struggling with incontinence, John. So, these kind of things, they are actually technically possible right now. And a lot of people are working on this, proximity marketing, using Bluetooth 4, BTLE, beacons, whatever. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to be in control of your data. And, this article actually came out in 2012. The chief of CIA said, "We'll spy you through your dishwasher." And so I guess that when you go home, just make sure, check the dishwasher for any strange devices. There was this article that came out where somebody actually found in a kettle and a sort of iron that came from Russia. They found some Wi-Fi devices that were being hidden inside. And they would just spy on the local network and just connect wherever. So in a way, you don't want to go from when something like this becomes this, because they also look fairly similar. Can you see the kind of the similarity, the metallic border and sort of. So this is something that again, last cartoon. It says, "I think my Nest smoke alarm is going off. Google AdWords just pitched me a fire extinguisher and an offer for temporary housing." So I think this is one of the issues that we're facing that we have to keep in mind. And these are some of the questions we have to answer to people when they start to buy the device that we build. So in a way, I want to just touch very briefly on some of the things that we are doing. So Arduino, we've been working for the past few months in building an open source cloud platform that we're going to release hopefully soon, that anybody can use. And we're trying to build something that's easy to use. Really, I want to enable people to build a connected device by writing 10 lines of code. And it has to be open, so there needs to be all sorts of different open source protocol. And I'm also, imagining some kind of a federation protocol, because since all these clouds are different, we need to find a way to kind of, communicate and connect all of them. There's also this issue of, the safety, security, all of that. So for example, we next week we are launching this new Wi-Fi shield for Arduino, where I think one of the main issues is that it actually includes this chip that does elliptic encryption in hardware. So one of the things you can do here is you can actually verify, for example, a lot of people have used these kind of techniques to try these man-in-the-middle attacks to connect the devices to basically replace the server they are talking to and intercept and understand the protocol and hack into the device. So that little chip, which actually was invented for other applications, turns out is really good for us to be able to verify signature, verify certificates of SSL connections. So that's something we're going to be embedding into all the connected products we do. And also, as I said, we're also working on this simplicity aspect. We have this project we've been working on to make modular electronics very, very easy to use. So I'm going to just show you a 30-second thing. Are we okay with that?
Oh, yes, please.
Good. So the idea was, how do we make modules that when you plug them into each other, they really understand each other, and when you build a device, you don't have to know exactly how each sensor operates. So we're building these modules where each one of them has a small processor on it. So when you connect them, they basically understand each other. So the different devices know what sensors, what actuators are available. And then you have a kind of a visual environment when you can basically see who built the different modules. It's already kind of imagined as a way when multiple people can contribute to this. And you can basically create application by creating logical connection between the devices, not physical connections. And also the idea is that these things can also be mounted on a PCB, like they were some kind of like you mount Wi-Fi modules, whatever. So you can create consumer electronic devices very quickly by putting together these modules. So you put together this, you get a pet feeder. So in a way, our idea was, as I mentioned, we can see there's like a strong push for modularization of electronics. A lot of people are building modules that contain the connectivity, power management, displays of different kind. If you want to move fast in product development, you need to package up things. And being able to replace these kind of packages and kind of upgrade your device with new technologies, but shortening the time it takes to build things. And also more and more people a lot of people are going to be participating in this market. They don't have a lot of experience in electronics manufacturing. So you put the hard stuff in small modules that you can combine, and you can build devices. So the last thing I want to show you is that in order to try to see what happens when we live in a world where whatever it's, what's around you is connected and it's also open source, we did this project in our office in Torino called Casa Jasmina. And the curator is Bruce Sterling. Do you know about Bruce Sterling? He's a science fiction writer. He's one of the people who started the cyberpunk movement back in the days. But he's been working on this, really studying what happens with IoT and connected devices. And he's obviously one of the people who you would call the skepticals, because he feels that if we don't do something, all this world of connected devices is going to be a nightmare. The dishwasher spying on us would be the nicest thing that can happen to us. So he's been very skeptical. So we built this apartment inside the office where all the furniture, all the hardware, all the software, everything is open source. And we work with people that come in, build projects, sleep there. We're going to have it on Airbnb soon, so you can rent it and just spend some time there as long as you want to, hang out. The thing is in the Arduino office, so one of the doors goes from the living room into the Arduino office, so you can hang out there. But the idea is to really kind of put together these ingredients. And so if you have time to come over, in mid-October, there is a Maker Faire also in Italy, in Rome, where I'm one of the curators. We expect there's going to be a lot of people this year, more than 100,000 people. So if you ever want to come and, over to Europe, you can also go visit the Casa Jasmina apartment and see what's happening there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have time for maybe 2 quick questions.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Question.
So the plus and downside of open source hardware is it's easy for people to use and it's easy for people to then copy. Mm-hmm. I know that Arduino has gone, kind of around back and forth with the idea of protecting Arduino as the idea and protecting the hardware and how you deal with that. Is there a plan or an idea for some sort of maybe powered by Arduino program where you get to embrace the community at large to bring people back in the fold. Not that the Arduino community is lacking in any way, but the idea to sort of to recognize these projects and these ideas that have kind of sprung forth from Arduino.
So we have a program that we call Arduino at Heart, which is kind of like that. So if somebody has a device which is powered by kind of Arduino technology and they want to sort of signal that they support Arduino, they can acquire that logo in exchange for a very tiny fee. But when we launched it, we didn't really do a great job there. So we are now redesigning the program a bit in order to make it easier for people to understand. I mean, one of the things, it worked a little bit with people that were doing Kickstarter projects because we had documented evidence of when Arduino was backing some of these Kickstarters, there was like a huge amount of, they got a huge amount of visibility, and so they met their funding goals sometimes because of the people we sent. So there was that particular use case, but I think we have to redesign this program to make it a little bit better. But I think there are ways, when I'm talking about the modularity aspect, in a way, we think that if you package up some of the technology into modules that are manufactured in the right volumes, then it becomes more difficult even if you give away all the documentation, it becomes more difficult for people to just copy that because you have to have the volumes. And the Arduino Uno is a commodity, is a very easy piece of hardware to copy. But if you're making a multi-layer PCB inside a very small module and you have parts in there which you negotiated with the different manufacturer in the right way, it becomes a little bit more difficult to be able to provide the same product at the same price. So it's, there are ways. Also, the whole area of like online services, you can be open source. You can give away a lot of the source code of your online services, but then you provide the service. So we have some announcement about some of these platforms becoming available now. So these are some of the areas where you can be open source and still try to not give away everything.
Great. One more question.
Can you tell a little bit more about on the product specifics, what Arduino does, and maybe give an example how Arduino was used to offer an IoT service or a product?
Yeah, so the basic manifestation of Arduino is, let me go back to the beginning. So the basic manifestation of Arduino is this board here, which is the size of a credit card. And it's essentially a development environment for microcontrollers. So this is using a basic a very small, very simple 8-bit microcontroller. The more recent Arduinos are running on small ARM processors, so you get more power. And so one of the things I haven't explained here is that Arduino is made mostly by a development environment that makes it very simple for people to get started programming with these things. And then all the documentation and the tutorials and everything else, and then the hardware. So you can use our software and documentation or whatever on a variety of different pieces of hardware. But in a way, like I say, we try to package up a lot of knowledge into a system which allows you to, if you buy this board and you don't know anything, in 15 minutes you'll be able to build something that works. So one of the examples I gave of a device is, for example, this particular project, for example, because I have a picture here. This is an Arduino plus module connected on top that provides network connectivity. And then they added the parts necessary to make a Geiger counter. So this is essentially a network-connected Geiger counter. And these were given to 100 people in Japan along the coast near where the Fukushima disaster happened. And so these devices were measuring the radioactivity levels and sending the data over the network to a map that people could look at online. So this was something that was put together very quickly because a lot of these elements were existing. If you look at the brown PCB on top there where the network plugs in, that's essentially, they took the design for our Ethernet module, which is open source, and they modified it to add the parts they needed to be also a Geiger counter. And then they manufactured enough of these modules to build 100 of these devices. So in a way, they exploited the open source nature of Arduino to add parts to the design, manufacturers more run, and they had it. And as I mentioned, it really helped people understand the real situation versus, the official message. There's a bunch of, as I mentioned, there are about 6 million regular members of the Arduino community, so the number of projects is huge. All right.
Let's hear a round of applause.
Thank you.
Great. And now, while Sherry sets up, another point I failed to mention is when Massimo was mentioning, you probably started making around age 8, and asking about the origins of Arduino and the Arduino project. He was mentioning it started as an academic project, and it was an audience of 50, and so it's pretty amazing that it went from 50 to 6 million active uniques per month and even more uniques. So it's a sign of great things that happen with open hardware and within this space. So thank you. We're delighted to have you. And now to Sherry. So Sherry, please, I mentioned a little bit about your background, but it'd be great before you let us know about the event and let us know a little bit more about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Excellent. Well, I started actually, and I'll go through a little bit in the slides, but Maker Faire actually was launched out of O'Reilly Media. I don't know how many of you know O'Reilly, but some of the tenets that O'Reilly stands for, so open and sharing and kind of being rooted in the tech community, but not necessarily always being tech focused. It's sort of kind of where we came from. Dale Doherty, who's the founder of Maker Media, the founder of Make Magazine, which we'll talk about as well, in our 11th year. Maker Faire is in its 10th year, and we're getting ready for our 20th event, which is pretty darn great. I don't think we ever expected that when we started 10 years ago. But one of the key things that I'll say, and even a couple of words on here, kind of an inclusive world and bridging communities. Maker Faire was really designed as a festival to celebrate makers, and it was a festival really kind of designed around this magazine, which is Make Magazine. One of the troubling things early on that we realized, and actually as I look around this room too, is that Make was pretty much a male audience and demographic, and while that's not bad, what we want to do is really be more inclusive and get more women and children and other folks making. And as we started going along with Maker Faire, we really found that we hit this kind of nerve that really actually touched a lot of people. It's multi-generational, making is cross-cultural, and probably the biggest thing for us, and I think Dale and I will both say, is that when we started 10 years ago, we never thought we'd be where we were today. I mean, we kind of thought, well, will the people come? And 10 years later, they actually have. So just talking a little bit about Maker Faire, and I don't know how many of you have actually been to a Maker Faire? Oh wow, awesome, that's great, good crowd here. So I don't have to really preach to you, but it's really the most wonderful experience ever. It's probably the hardest I've ever worked in my life, but it's most fulfilling because, especially when we see like little kids and kind of that next generation of makers. And even today with the news, I'm sure all of you have been tracking the Mohammed story, right? He's going to be, I talked to his sister today, and he will be, if everything aligns, he wants to be at Maker Faire and tell his story and come with his family. So he needed to get through. I'm talking to his sister in the morning. Their living room and their life has been turned upside down, but it's actually one of those great things about the maker community even coming together. So just love it. This is like, and from an event producer perspective, the picture that we have up here, this is what a keynote can look like at Maker Faire. This is Adam Savage that gives his Sunday morning sermon on making. We do a lot of other things too. It's not just all about making. I mean, in my mind, Maker Faire is this newfangled county fair. It's kind of rockets and robots, and it's bringing people together at least once a year to share and showcase what they do. And here's Stephen and Fritz from the Diet Coke and Mentos guys. And what's even great this year, because we also want to take making outside of even the walls. It's a paid event, which there's good news with that and there's bad news with that. It's just sort of the realities that we live in right now to produce what we need to produce. But this year we're actually taking, the Diet Coke and Mentos guys are going to be performing in front of the Unisphere. So we're opening it up to everyone. We're going to try to get the kids in Queens engaged. There's several holidays during the week, and so on Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to do some after-school, no school day, science programming. And then the kids will be able to check out these guys. They're quite wonderful, and hopefully you can catch a show. And especially in front of the iconic Unisphere, which is great. And there it is. Again, here's kind of a kid's dance floor. And so there's interactivity and play at Maker Faire, fun. These are this is Acme Muffineering, and these guys created these muffin cars that actually to go to Burning Man. But the wonderful thing about it is that they're electric vehicles. You can actually, they share their designs, and these muffins are popping up all over the world. We have power racing. This is actually another really great experience. It started out at Pumping Station 1, which was one of the early hackerspaces in Chicago. Jim Burke and Patrick Callahan. Jim is on our staff now, but they've got power racing kind of all over the US, and they've got big plans. I'm sure they'd love to take it to Rome as well. But the idea here being is that, and as you know, the maker community is pretty collaborative instead of competitive. But this is a fun way to teach people about electric vehicles. You have to spend less than $500 and kind of take one of those old little kids' Power Wheel racing cars. So they'll be at Maker Faire this year as well. Hands-on learning, another thing I think that's really special about Maker Faire is that we really encourage people to touch, do, and it's kind of a challenge from an event production perspective because you've got to figure out all the legal parts of it, but lock picking, learning to solder, and I'm sure all you guys know, I mean, learning to solder is one of those things that's so like liberating, especially when a kid like realizes that they've connected something or connected a circuit. So those things are really important to us. But then again, fun and play and performance is also really is part of it too. A little bit about who we are. I'm Sherry. I, with Dale, kind of created the event. That's my producer, Louise. We've been here from the beginning. Actually, I was in an electric car there on Muffin. Some of the tenets, again, of the Maker movement. That's the first issue of Make magazine. If any of you probably know, it was a small trim size. But some of Make's, if you can't open it, you don't own it. Void a warranty, poke your eye out. Again, these are things that even just getting kids or people to think like, wait, that doesn't make sense, does it? Or maybe it does. So again, that's kind of where we came from. The magazine, we're kind of a classic, started as kind of a classic publishing house, and really we've got kits, we've got Maker Shed, and we've got the whole thing with events, but we're a mission-driven company, and our goal is to make makers. And actually, it's been kind of a wonderful period as this has all happened. Now, the first few years, and I'm sure Massimo will agree, no one really knew that there was a maker movement going on. We'd be calling people and talking to them about what Maker Faire is, and I'm sure Massimo was doing the same with Arduino. But it was kind of a perfect storm, and back in like 2009, 2010, when the economy was tanking, and it really kind of liberated people too, because maybe they lost their job, but it might not have been a job they liked anyway. And mostly the audience for Make, when Make started, and again, it still tends to trend more male demographic, but mostly engineers is where it started. It's kind of changing a little bit, and we're trying to help change that too. But people that wanted to get into making things, and they went to college and thought they were going to get out and make things, but actually at work they're kind of managing people and projects and budgets and like, where's the making? So they're making on the weekend. And through that then with the economy going south and a whole host of other things, and actually the mass media picking it up, which is really quite wonderful. A series of books, there's Lamore Freed, Bree Pettis. Bree actually used to work at Make doing weekend projects. He was a school teacher up in Seattle, and has really had quite the path over the past 10 years. Chris Anderson, it's just kind of been a whole interesting ride. The things when people ask me like what is the maker movement, and probably things for you guys to think about as well as you're advancing in IoT space is really kind of like this participatory culture. Massimo talked about open source and open hardware, and that's like really key. This is a really kind of sharing and giving community. Creative communities and sharing, these are all the things that kind of make what we're doing so special. And what's even more special is instilling that into kids, because think about it, we've had 10 years of kids that have actually been kind of drinking this Kool-Aid. I can't wait for the next 10 years to see what happens. going mainstream with the maker movement, I hope so. This is a good thing. And I hope that there's more making. I hope there's more making in schools. Again, I think what happened today with Ahmed is like one of those things like, come on. This is really like fundamentally who we are. And, like Dale will say, we're kind of designed to make. And actually physical objects also, you can tell a story with them, and there's a narrative around them, which is really important. The other thing, and I think you guys know this, and these are just some slides I've had in here, but other factors are, like open hardware, crowdsourcing, collaborative communities, tech shops, makerspaces. These have all kind of helped, again, kind of propel this moving forward. And I think the next 10 years will be also quite interesting too. Our friends at the Grommet have put together numbers because everyone likes numbers, but again, we're starting to see this like local manufacturing. And I think Massimo, I don't know if you talked about, but Massimo's actually got, your cards are being manufactured now in the US, correct? Through Adafruit, so in New York. So that's like a really cool thing, right? And that's what we hope to see more of. And even I'm sure a lot of like Phil and Lamore, and Phil said to say hello tonight. They're doing their Ask an Engineer in their weekly show. But these are kind of the things and indicators that people are starting to pay attention to. Kind of makers in the market, who are these people? Well, they're pretty creative. This is a group out of Jeff Sturgis and team out of Detroit. But, it almost doesn't matter. Again, it's people coming together and sharing. And this is the National Needle Arts. They come to like every Maker Faire, and their goal is to teach people to knit and crochet. Like, how cool is that, right? You may never have had a chance to do it, but you certainly have time at Maker Faire to kind of sit down, and they also love getting men to do that as well. Here's lockpicking. Again, actually in San Mateo we have the police department. They're all kind of standing and like, hey, you want to learn how to do that? But it breaks down the barriers, and this is kind of that whole thing about community. Food is one of those things that we added, and actually Massimo had a slow food example as well, but food is kind of something that everybody's got to figure out, whether you have to make it or buy it or whatever you do. So it's, you might not think that you'll ever solder or make a robot, but food is one of those things, and especially with kind of the food movement that's happening now, farm to table, etc., we're starting to see that happen. But again, the pure joy of just making, and when it all comes together or you do something, I think this little kid's face says it all. Dale said like we're all makers, and again, when he started Make Magazine, he had originally thought of calling it Hacks, and he was working on at O'Reilly. He was the line editor for the book series called the Hacks series. But then he realized that hacks didn't really mean a whole lot, and kind of making was really what was happening. And so, starting with Make Magazine and kind of having this idea that to really call out people as makers. And you can be a maker whoever you are. You don't need a degree. I mean, you really just kind of need to jump in there. And that's, I think, what's made this so inclusive and so wonderful to get people involved. I'll just show you this. This is kind of, we at Make kind of classify people into like 3 categories when we're doing our marketing planning. And so this zero to maker, kind of like folks that are new to making. So a lot of kids or people that aren't sure if they're a maker, kind of in that category. Maker to maker, which is kind of the maker community. A lot of the folks that are exhibiting at Maker Faire tend to be in that maker to maker area. And then maker to market, which is really the Maker Pro story, where we're finding that people are starting to go professional and having a community to help make them happen. So into Maker Faire. So actually, when Linda called me, the great thing is that I just happened to be in town. My team is coming in, and we're getting ready to set up Maker Faire. This will be our 6th Maker Faire, and trust me, every one of these minutes and seconds we're feeling. It's always a race against the clock, and I have a team that just really wants to deliver, especially for the makers. And so in 9 days and 22 hours, we'll be there. We've partnered in New York with the New York Hall of Science, which there's so many wonderful things about it. And truth be told, we probably couldn't do Maker Faire if we were in like a Javits Center or anywhere else. Dollars are kind of crazy, and rules. I mean, we're not great with rules, JetCon, oh yeah. Well, we've got some few things up our sleeve this year too. But we've found that over the years, like our passion and enthusiasm, the care that my team puts together, like we've charmed like the New York Police Department, the fire department. We have Gerard, who's one of our makers that does paella for the makers on dinner. You know, we found that the firemen are kind of like driving their fire trucks in, and from an event production perspective, we're thinking, uh-oh, what's happening? Nope, they're just driving in because Gerard gives them free paella. So they drive their truck in, get the paella, and drive out. We also found those same firemen, actually, that we have someone called the Great Friendini, who will scan people, and then then it'll print out a 3D printed statue. Same things, a bunch of firemen kind of suited up were coming in, running into the building. They were running in to get their 3D scans of their bodies, like full on in their suits. So it actually, I have to say, Maker Faire tends to bring out the best of everyone. But the New York Hall of Science, you know, there's space there to grow, and there's space there for us to actually take programs out into the community. Again, that's important to us to make more makers. It's also on the site of the World's Fairground from 39 and 64. It's a pretty special property, and I have to say it's really kind of a wonderful place, not to mention the New York Hall of Science people are really great people, and again, we share the same mission. To give you a little bit of an idea, Linda mentioned something about MakerCon, and what we'll try to do is we have some events, and then the community has events, but kind of leading up this Maker Faire week that starts next week, we have a few things going on. So there's a STEM night, kind of getting kids into, getting a chance to meet Dale and some of the other folks and getting them prepped for their next session in life, whether that's school or whether that's just going out and starting to work. We have MakerCon, which I'll talk a little bit about, which is kind of our conference by and for makers. And then we'll have a Make Educational Forum on Friday, which will be kind of interesting. This is actually helping the educators really get the tools that they need to actually take making back into the classroom. So we have a lot of folks actually even coming in from Washington, D.C. Tom Khalil, who's from the Office of Science and Technology Programs, and Stephanie Santoso from the White House as well are really kind of pushing it. So it's really kind of a good thing to happen too. And then just for MakerCon, there's a whole host. We actually are opening up with Minerva, who's your CTO. So New York has the first, their first CTO is a woman, which is great. And so she'll be there opening up with Dale. We also have a couple keynotes, Dr. Ellen Williams, who's from the Department of Energy, and then interesting James Fallows from the Atlantic, and he's going to be talking about the gig economy, which kind of ties into all the things that we're talking about. You can go to, I won't spend a whole lot of time here, Massimo's going to be speaking on a panel, and we kind of, MakerCon really gets into kind of the business of making and maker ecosystems. We'll also have design, so Alan Chachnoff from Core 77 will be there, and there's a whole host of folks. It's a great lineup, and it's almost too many speakers for one day. Imagine that, right? For Maker Faire, we'll have, we'll have about over 900 maker entries, which translates to about 3,600 makers that we're kind of working to place, and about 100 sponsors that go along with them. The Bay Area was our flagship event, and that tends to be our larger event. But New York is fast growing to be a pretty important city. We, last year, President Obama had the first White House Maker Faire, which actually kind of changed a lot of people's lives and has actually put a spotlight on making, especially in Washington, which is great. This past year, we had the National Maker Faire in DC, since obviously it's pretty hard to do a Maker Faire at the White House. But, and Massimo was there too, so it was great. And just kind of celebrating Maker Fairs around the world. Last year we had 131, this year we'll have over 150. And it's one of those things, again, that we didn't really know that Maker Faire would translate, but by coming up with playbooks and finding partners that got it, it really actually is kind of translating all over the world. This year we'll have over 150, and as Massimo mentioned, Rome, which is one of our largest international partners, those guys in year 3 will be well over 100,000, which is pretty impressive, and it's pretty exciting to see when all the people come out. This is just to give you an idea of a map and how it's spreading, which is great. We'll touch over 1 million attendees that are coming to Maker Fairs this year, and that's kind of another positive thing. The blue is the Maker Fairs that we produce. The green are the featured fairs, which are larger ones, and the reds tend to be the smaller programs. Other things that we're doing is we've started a program called School Maker Faire. So we're trying again to get tools and materials into teachers' hands to make that happen, and that's goodness. Dale started something called the Maker Education Initiative, which is really, again, kind of helping the administrators get the materials that they need and kind of understand how they can bring making into the schools. And then we've also started, this is year 4 of something called Maker Camp, which is started as a summer program with Google's help and support. This past summer, Intel and AT&T helped fund it, and we're kind of turning it into a year-round program. So online virtual camp for kids. So that's kind of what I have. I do have a little video here I can kind of run and we can chat or, and kind of figure out. This is just to kind of see, this is just the Bay Area, and again, and this was done by a maker, honestly. Sometimes the maker things are better than sometimes the folks do on our staff. So Maker, this is the Bay Area this last year. Just to get a different sense, the Bay Area is actually held at a fairgrounds. That's all tape. It's something called tapagami. That's all masking tape that this gentleman had created. Those are all hangers on the wall with patterns. The Bay Area, by having a fairground, we get a lot of devices. This is a Crucible in Oakland, teaching people how to create. The game of drones. We're actually going to have a big drone. That's another thing we noticed too with the Pope coming to town. It's been clear that there's no drone flying in the park. Well, we've got a caged 35-foot by 200-foot field, so there'll be drone racing and combat and lots of drones. This is the fashion show. This is DJ Qbert, and DJ Qbert will be playing. Intel's brought them in. We turn one hall in the Bay Area into a dark room, so it's kind of the closest we'll get to like a Burning Man experience where lights and energy and things can happen there. So, and again, this goes on for a few more minutes, but I don't know if anyone has any questions or.
Questions for Sherry?
Yes.
What do you guys think in general of the drone policy that they want to make some manufacturer they just heard about recently, where they won't let them go like near airports and stuff? I kind of like it, but
Yeah.
that's just me.
Yeah. You know, the drone community, just like most of the maker communities, really want to get ahead of this. So one of our editors, Mike Sinisi, has been very focused on drones, and we're trying to pull together. The drone community wants people to be safe, and they want to kind of set their own rules. So we're hoping that we're gonna see movement coming from the making world before we're kind of regulated. Now we do believe. I actually had another video I could have shown. It's a fun one called A Drones Day at Maker Faire. We're really trying to make sure that wherever we can and wherever we can pattern behavior, that we kind of teach people to be smart about drone flying as much as possible in drone education. So that's a key thing, but I think that's kind of bringing all the right people to the table will be important. So.
Sherry, when
Yes.
are you going to have your fashion event?
The fashion, so Tanya's referring to is at MakerCon, we're going to be, there's a woman by the name of Danit Peleg, and if you haven't seen her work, it's DANITPELEG. She's created some beautiful fashions using home 3D printers. She and her husband are coming over from Israel, and we'll have MakerCon at the end of the day, like at 6 o'clock, we'll have them, and then we'll have the models kind of walking around at the Evening of Innovation so people can see it. I am not sure she is speaking. I can find out for you. We also have a Maker Faire app, so it's another great way if you download the app. Either it's on iOS and Android, you can make that happen. This is Miguel, this is Pancake Bot. But, as you can see, it doesn't suck. This is a pretty fun job. And just kind of seeing what the makers are doing, and the spirit that they bring is so great. And so I encourage you guys to, if there's any, if you want to get involved. We actually have a volunteer program called Travelers, which is also another nice way to not only meet our group, but kind of get in. And I never want price to be an obstacle. We give away 5,000 tickets to the neighborhood kids too in Queens to make it available for them, and they could be kids or parents could come. So we really are trying to get making out there, and yeah. Yes.
How long did it take for you guys to prepare an event? How many months, or do you prepare all year long?
Well, we have It's one of those things. Makers usually are pretty lax in applying, so it's some of it's driven by our talent. I would say there's a good 4 months of work that goes into these, and next year we're looking at adding some more cities. We're looking at possibly London, Chicago, maybe LA. But we're building systems, and actually I'm fortunate. I have the same team that I've had. They're all a lot of them are contractors, but they really like this event because it's so great to see like things like people aren't complaining. Like, you know, they're there and everyone's pretty happy, and it's a good thing. This is part of the fashion show too. Yes.
In Massimo's presentation, he showed some of the toys that inspired him as a child, and that kind of showed how making used to be a big thing.
Right.
What made making go away?
I don't know. Massimo might want to help me answer that. What made making go away? I mean, I think some of it. I think it's just, you know, it became a liability in shop classes and, you know, home ec. There was costs. There was. What do you think, Massimo? Computer.
People started to hack. People started to play with computers, and it became more about the software. Then people started to play video games, and they got lost. You know, so I think computers had a lot to do with that. People became more interested in playing with software, building websites, and so they distanced themselves.
This will be here. This is Robot Resurrection. It's 20 feet tall. The gentleman, the maker's from Shane is from Colorado, and that's made all out of used airplane parts, and it has fire. So we'll have fire this year in New York, which is great. This one's beautiful. This gentleman inspired from Buckminster Fuller, and yeah, it's just crazy beautiful stuff. And you know, everyone's so darn nice at Maker Faire. They'll tell you anything. So again, I hope you can all join us. And I don't know, thank you for your time, and thank you, Linda, for inviting us tonight. Did you want to plug in?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Great. So thank you again, Sherry. That's super exciting and interesting. And just as we saw by Massimo's, I'm going to just put this down. Story, just as we saw by Massimo's kind of account of how he started with 50 students and then grew to all these uniques. Likewise, we hear about Maker Faire, and you just see the global footprint and what Sherry and her team are doing. So it's just fantastic. So let's give her another round of applause. Thank you. We also know you have a super busy schedule because you're on the countdown clock, so we really appreciate you both being here tonight. So thank you everyone again. Thank you to our speakers, and feel free to chat for a bit before we're kicked out, and have a great night. Thanks.